Afternoon or good evening, everybody. This is our first evening show. This is episode number 29 of the Sports Consiglieres Podcast. As with me always is my compadre Cheech, my friend, my
Wow.
pal, my colleague, my former coworker, and my consigliere. Jerry, how you doing, my friend?
What's up, buddy? Jimmy, how you doing, pal?
Yeah, a lot going on here, so we just
Got a
figured we
lot.
minus the guests, and we just figured just jump right into it. So first off, we had Don Demola from Montreal Expos, Don the Furrier Demola. So that was a good way to go back to the Expos, revisit the Expos. What do you think of the last guest, Jerry?
Very colorful. I can say this because I have plenty of friends out there, as we know from work. Very typical Long Island Italian. I really enjoyed his personality. And, again, he gave us what I love about a guy like that. And we talked about this. He doesn't have the stats. He doesn't have the name. He had a really good high school career. But, just the stories about, Gary Carter and in winter ball and, all the different things and all the things that he went through, living in Montreal. And, it was a really good guest, fascinating guest.
Yeah, and then
That Expos lined or Vine that we're on is really pumping for us, and the feedback has been great. So
it definitely has an Expos.
Shout out to Danny Gallagher once again.
Yes, sir. And the Expos Fest, I think the tickets went on sale on Saturday. They have a long list of Expos. I guess it's a dinner. It's a fundraising thing. It's $200. I think it's in April, but there's a bunch of guests if you want to look at Expos Fest. We have no vested interest in it other than we just kind of stumbled upon it with Danny Gallagher. And then I was just intrigued with the 1994 strike and how it impacted the Montreal Expos and just kind of opened up a door to a different world that we really didn't know existed. So, but Jerry, let's turn to our beloved Giants. Another loss this weekend. First winless streak since 1974, since they're at the Yale Bowl. I think, I think they're signing a quarterback off the street. I guess,
well, Locke is starting this week.
Yeah, Locke is starting this week. So
we had to end with Tim Boyle. I think I would have rather watched Peter Boyle, but or at this, to stay in the Christmas spirit, I rather would have watched Tiny Tim. But again, it's bad. This week decimated with injuries. We can volley this thing back and forth. I don't see. They have Atlanta this week, the Colts at home. They close out at home with the Colts, and then they end this god awful season at the Link in Philly. I really don't see them winning a game. I don't see how Brian Daboll survives this. And I know we can go, and a lot of people have been going back and forth on this, but it's I just think sometimes, you have to, for, organizationally speaking, you just have to hit the reset button. And again, things have been very, very bad for a long time. When I was a kid, I thought things were really bad when Ray Hanley was the coach, and at the end of the day, his teams were 8-8 and 6-10.
Yeah, it just seemed worse. But once you said 8-8 and 6-10, I'd almost take that this season.
Yeah. Again, you can't kill them for like Sunday. They're decimated. They're decimated. The defensive line, they were decimated in the secondary. Offensive line, whatever. They're decimated, and that typically what happens. When you're in a situation like this, it's like a snowball. The injuries just keep, going and going. But a lot of things have happened this year, and I think, he took away the play calling from Mike Kafka. Things didn't improve at the beginning of the year, and I just don't see how you can keep Daboll and let him, and this staff continue. Before we came on the air, my son was reminding me how much better things were when Wink Martindale was the defensive coordinator on the defensive side of the ball. You take away those few big sack games. The rushing defense is awful, but now I think the real question is, and there's a lot of the New York Post was drumming this up does Joe Shane survive without Dable? And my answer to that is I think they both have to go,
You
because
think so? I mean,
I
listen,
think you need to bring in a coach, a GM, to hire his first coach. They're married, give them a 5-year deal. And I know that's what these guys have. And unfortunately, they're one of them is probably not going to last the duration of the contract. But I just think you have to I mean, Shane had a good draft this year. You got Tracy, he took Neighbors. There's a lot of good things. Newbin, there's a lot of good players.
yeah, Johnson. We've talked about that, Johnson. But I mean,
his hands are in this with Dable.
Well, I think if you look at Giants fans, I think Giants fans are split right down the middle. So,
I agree.
The only thing I would say is the argument is they inherited Jones, and I guess the word that Shane used was reevaluate talent. So he wanted to reevaluate talent, and they won the first year. Listen, they caught lightning in a bottle. They had the fourth down try in the first game, and that kind of set the tone for their first year, and they made the playoffs, and then they beat the Vikings away. So we were rolling. Jones get the big contract. Injuries last year. Jones gets hurt. I think that they held the ship afloat. But I mean, this year, even Tiki Barber, I was watching the game. I just figured, because now I'm doing this podcast. Normally I wouldn't, I wouldn't assess myself to watching bad football. But I mean, even Tiki Barber was saying, just like the product on the field, it just doesn't look good. So
it's bad football all around. Absolutely.
And
you can go back a few games, 12, 13 penalties, it's brutal. And the argument is, of the whole Jones thing, and I alluded to this in a previous episode, is, they inherited him, but Joe Shane gave him that contract. So this is not a year one. All right, we inherited this guy. We're gonna stick it out, so to speak. But do I think Daniel Jones is as bad as he played this year? I really don't. I don't think he's a $40 million. I don't think anybody think he's a $40 million quarterback. But there was bad football from the start of the season, and there's going to be even worse football probably these next few weeks. With the injuries, and again, you have a situation. To try to be the eternal optimist, the only thing, there's 1.5 things I think you could take away from this season. Is how in God's name is Malik Neighbors going to crack 1,000 yards? And right now he has 80 catches, and he's had 4 different people throwing him the football.
And
how
five this weekend if you count Shedeur Sanders. So
they had their cameo in the streets of Manhattan. But and Tyrone Tracy's had a pretty good year. I know he got beat up with the fumbles, but ultimately, guys are rookie.
That's going to happen. That's going to happen. That's going to happen.
Nobody had him playing as much as he has. Everybody thought that Motor Singletary was just going to be the top dog, and Tracy would spell him. And Tracy's the premier back, and it's bad football.
Just use a Chris Berman line. He goes, remember he was talking about the Yuccaneers way back when on ESPN. Yeah. He says a lot of fans were dressed up as empty seats. I mean, to see Giant Stadium, MetLife Stadium, with away fans there and then cheering. It's just John Mara, and then they had the 2 plane, the 2 flyovers with the plane. So. I mean, it's just bad. I don't think it's as bad as the 1970s, but I mean, it's bad. So I mean, I think if I own a team, I think I would have to probably, let him go, because it's just the thing is I think Shane, he just was paralysis by analysis. So, they signed Jones. They didn't work a deal out with Barkley. He's having a monster season. They didn't work a deal out with McKinney. We talked about this before. He might be the defensive player of the year. They didn't get rid of Slayton and Ojulari when they know that they, at least kind of get something, but they really haven't done anything really to kind of like, and right now, I think the best players are the ones that are looking for roster spots for next year, like your Chapman. Mike McFadden, he's been playing well.
Yeah.
Solid
he had 11 tackles on Sunday.
Yeah. So, I mean, and if you're a free agent, why are you going to come here? So, I mean, I listened to a couple podcasts on the way back from my truck today. But like I guess they're uh, people are comparing to maybe the Detroit. Yeah, look at Detroit. They stunk up the place, and now Campbell. So you had the right combination, but they did it with golf too. They did it with they didn't do it through the draft, and then
Yeah.
the only thing is like looking at the draft, you got Cam Ward and Shador Sanders. So I mean, if they get rid of if they get rid of Dable, I think everybody's going to be saying hire Dion. If they don't get rid of Dable and hire and draft Sanders, then everybody's going to say when Dion's coming. So that's a slippery slope. And I don't know, Cam Ward, he wasn't up for the Heisman. So I mean, playing in the ACC, which is a softer conference. So I mean, nothing against the kid. He probably has a lot of potential. I'm wrong a lot. So I don't know where you go. I guess I would just go with a veteran, just try to right the ship. I don't know what your thoughts are, Jerry, on where to go
Well, I
from
mean,
here.
again, see, that's the thing, and I had this conversation the other day with a guy who's an Eagles fan of all people. But Ernie Accorsi in his very very well written book, The GM, said, when you take a quarterback, one or two, you better be right. And he really, you look at his record. I mean, he was 2 for 2. He drafted Elway with the Colts, even though obviously Elway didn't play with the Colts, and he drafted Eli Manning. Um, that's an interesting question, because here's the thing: if Joe Shane and Brian Dable keep their jobs, and the Giants pick one or two, one of those guys will be the quarterback of the New York Giants next year. A lot of people aren't so sure that either one of those guys should be drafted one or two. So now if you have a new regime, they know they have the 5 years. They might be more apt to trying to bridge it until they find their guy. But we can go. This is like a yo-yo. We can go up and down on this. Is that you don't again, you shouldn't, correct me if I'm wrong here, but ideally, right? And I know it hasn't worked out. It seemed like the Lions picked top 5 for every year for many years, right? But you shouldn't find yourself picking one or two too often. And I know there are people that aren't sold on Sanders or Ward. So to answer your question, if this regime stays, one of those two guys will be the quarterback of the Giants next year. If
You
it's a
think
new
so?
regime, I think all possibilities are open, because now Shane, if you keep Shane and Dable, right, they're just going to complete year 3, right? So what do you give them? Another 2 years? They don't want a bridge guy. They're not going to sign a Sam Darnold or a Kirk Cousins, whoever, somebody like that, until they get their own guy. They're going to say, you know what, we're going to take Sanders Award, and we're just going to roll this the next 2 years and see where it takes us. And this, I want to make this clear, because I know what happens is, people in New York sports, and rightfully so, it's the quarterback, Daniel Jones, the quarterback. There are a lot of problems with this team. Defensively, the run defense is the absolute pits, right? They've been playing piss poor, right? Even in the Giants' worst day back in the day, that was usually a strength, was their defense, right?
Yeah,
Particularly
always.
their run defense, right? So their run defense stinks. I liked, the only thing I liked in the Hard Knock series was the exposure that Shane Bowen got, the defensive coordinator. At sometimes he brings pressure, other times he doesn't. I'm not really in love with the scheme, but there are more holes. Listen, obviously you need the quarterback. It goes without saying. That's football 101. But there are a lot of holes on this team. And are you going to give these guys another 5 years? Because I think certain things need to be gutted.
Yeah, and then
Needs to be gutted.
and then everybody. Like I said, I listened to a couple of podcasts and competition, but like George Young wanted Howard Schnellenberger, but he wanted another year in Miami. And he wanted to fire Parcells. So I mean,
Correct.
look how that would have been turned out. So I mean, so do you hold what you have, or do you fold and start fresh? I don't know. This is not 1983. It's
No.
not. So it's a win now league. Free agency. there's a lot out there. So it's a win now league. So you know, I think you look at Shane, he just didn't really make any moves. He just really kind of just sat on his hands and wasn't, credit. Yeah, you brought up some players he did credit. Neighbors looks like,
Yeah.
it's a lock. Tracy, Theo Johnson looks like it, but so much more. I think what bothers people or bothers fans is like I think Barkley was a big miss. If they would have traded him, they would have and got something for him. I think we said on 2 episodes ago. Um, I think people would say, well, at least he knew he wasn't going to sign. But I mean, it couldn't have gone worse. And the only thing that's going to go worse is if the Buffalo Bills win the Super Bowl. So,
Well,
which is yeah,
now the whole thing that Dable, took Josh Allen to another level. That argument,
yeah,
is really going by the wayside. But see, that's the thing, and I think I don't want to put it on a TV show, but what really killed the Giants, right, is the Hard Knocks. Because if you watch any part of the episode, any episode where Barkley came up in a discussion in a staff room setting, right, when there's other staff present, Shane makes it abundantly clear, right? He has zero intention of signing Barkley. If that was the case, why not move him before the deadline? He had zero, right, intention of signing McKinney. Why not move him on a deadline? When we were kids, NFL trades were few and far between. It didn't happen in the NFL. I remember in '86 when the Giants traded for O.J. Anderson, and somebody told me that. I thought it was a joke because NFL trades just didn't happen. It wasn't the way they did business. Way back when free agency hit NFL, I'm going to date myself now. You had, well, I think it was Plan A free agents and Plan B free agents. It was a different system, right? So if you knew those players weren't coming back, I don't care if you would have got 2 fifth-round draft picks, right? To get nothing is a mistake. Now, we talked about this. Fast forward. The Giants aren't signing. I don't care who the coach is next year. Darius Slayton, who is my favorite Giant now,
yeah.
right, is not coming back. Could have moved him. Ojulari is not coming back. You could have moved him. He wasn't hurt. He had a few sacks. There are a lot of teams, fighting for the playoffs that are still relevant that would have took either one or two. And again, what do you get back? Nobody's looking. You get back one draft. You get back a 5, whatever it is. You get back something. And that's what I don't understand about Shane. And if you ask me, give me one sentence about what's your problem with his whole regime, is that he had no intention of signing those 2 guys that we talked about last year. Same thing this year. Be active. I mean, I don't get it. I really don't.
And the thing is, the Hard Knocks was very uncharacteristic of the Giants. Remember, like Jesse
Very
Palmer.
uncharacteristic. Yes.
Yeah, I mean Jesse Palmer was the Bachelor, and Coughlin had a field day with that.
Yes.
It was a distraction. So, and the thing is, just like very uncharacteristic of it, and I think it really exposed a team. And I think beginning of the year, we were all for it. Oh yeah, you get rid of Barkley. He's 27 years old. You do the line, but then they're signing people off other people's practice squad, other players on practice squads. It just hasn't been good football. And then now we're rooting for the Raiders to lose. And then now, like this weekend, you got Pinnox, who somebody they passed on is going to be going against the Giants. So if he lights up the place, then it's you could just start hearing.
If that happens, if that scenario happens, the coffin is sealed.
Yeah, you'll hear the nails in the coffin.
Yep.
So, but so I mean, that's what we see. You got 3 games left. You have Atlanta, the Colts, and then Philly. Which I wonder how Philly's going to handle that last game. I wonder if they're just going to, if they're just going to stick the knife in even further, or they're just going to rest everybody. But who knows? But I mean, it's
you take them in order. The scary thing: Atlanta at 7-7 is still only a game out of first, and they actually swept the Buccaneers this year, so they own that tiebreaker. So this is a huge game, and I give Raheem Morris a lot of credit he wasn't happy with Kirk Cousins, the inconsistency. And he's like, hey, we're still alive. Let's make a change.
Yeah, well, I think you have to. I think you had to. He lost 4 games in a row. So I mean, Cousins.
Isn't he? I believe isn't he an Elizabeth guy?
Cousins?
No, Raheem
No,
Morris.
I don't
He's a
think
Jersey
so.
guy.
There was a Raheem Moore, but not he played.
No,
for the
that Raheem Morris is from the coach of the Falcons is definitely from Jersey.
Well, I don't know.
I gotta look that up.
You got me stumped on that one. So, but anyway, boy, you want to talk a little bit about your Red Bulls?
Well,
yeah,
you had to bring that up.
I was all hyped.
Bring that up. My prediction obviously was off. It was the first. So I'm sorry. I was correct in the state real quick. He went to Irvington High School.
Irvington High School. Okay.
Born in Newark, Irvington High School, and went to Hofstra. Went to college at Hofstra.
Okay.
Well, so listen, anyway,
Irvington produces a lot of.
Yeah, I was looking. I was looking to give Elizabeth credit for once, but
Teray from Rutgers, he was on the Colts.
Yeah.
Alshmead Singleton, he was an Irvington guy. So a lot of Irvington football that made it to the NFL.
The Red Bulls, my prediction was wrong. Take away the first 13 minutes in which they conceded 2 very quick goals. In typical Red Bull fashion, they had a little mishap. They had a player 5 minutes before player introductions have an illness, and he had to be removed from the starting lineup. And it was they're very tight-lipped about this illness, but let's just say 48 hours after losing MLS Cup to the LA Galaxy, Andres Reyes was traded. This is the player I'm referring to. He was the starting center back. He actually, his Red Bull career is very inconsistent, but he was playing very, very well in the playoffs this year. He was traded to the expansion San Diego franchise, and they sent back $800,000. So you draw your own conclusion. And I think what happened was, and again, not to take anything away from LA was a really, really solid team. They actually wound up finishing with 19 or 20 more points than the Red Bulls did on the year. They took the game in the first 13 minutes. They scored 2 goals. They attacked the Red Bulls' weakness. The Red Bulls looked very unhinged. They got, as the first half moved along, they got settled into the game, if you will. And the second half, the Red Bulls actually did outplay LA. They just couldn't find the back of the net. It was 2-1 at the half. So going into the half and coming out of the half, there were a lot of positives. I like the team going forward. It was the youngest team in the league. There's some good pieces. There's some good pieces that are coming in that they're bringing in. And it was exciting because I always say when I've been around them when they were expected to do big things, as a higher seed, and it never materialized. And this was a pleasant surprise, a very entertaining, and I think a very successful Eastern Conference championship that they did wind up winning. Obviously the MLS Cup didn't end the way I wanted it to, but it was a good run.
But listen, at least you were still there, and then. Just turning to the Yankees, I know your buddy has a connection with Nestor Cortez. He got traded to Milwaukee. What do you think about the Soto signing? I think is it going back to I think about like Griffey and A-Rod, 2 superstars in the same building. It was Judge's team. It was a shadow too big for Soto. I mean, 26 years old. He always got a.
I think at the end of the day, you can't fault the Yankees. I don't think Soto wanted to come back to the Yankees. I think that's very clear. You could make a lot of different arguments, or you could give a lot of different reasons. One is that it's Aaron Judge's team. The other thing is, the Mets do have a nice history. They don't have a history like the Yankees. And if Soto ever did win the World Series with the Mets, they might rename the borough of Queens, the borough of Juan Soto. I mean, that's the difference there. And if he's very successful with the Mets, I mean, and they win a World Series, let alone win multiple World Series, his legacy will shoot up tenfold. I mean, you look at, I always say this, the Mets and the Knicks, I always use those two references, right? Each year it goes by and the Mets don't win, the star of Keith Hernandez and the legacy of Keith Hernandez with the Mets, and he wasn't a career Met, as we all know, it gets brighter and brighter. Gary Carter, that 86 team. You look at the Knicks, a year goes by when the Knicks don't win, right? Frazier, Bradley, those guys, the status keeps going up, if that's even possible. Those guys are almost considered saints, by longtime Knicks fans. If Brunson in this group, wins a title, they'll put a statue of Brunson in front of, because think about how many times the Knicks have failed. The same thing with the Mets. I mean, Soto has a real opportunity here, to really leave a lasting legacy in Major League Baseball. And like you said, he's young. They're going to pay a lot of money on the back end of that contract. But as we all know, the ideology behind it is hopefully he pays off on the front end of that contract.
Yeah, well, Steve Cohen doesn't really care about. He wants to win. So I mean,
listen, it's a fun time to be a Met fan, that's for sure.
Yeah, man, and almost like they stuck it to the Yankees, which every Met fan likes.
Yeah. And again, Dave and I were talking. Our producer Dave Sturcio, we were talking before the show. Ultimately, hey, if this is the Yankees' plan B, it's a damn good one. It's a damn good one, because now they got the Bellinger trade. You got a guy that could play first. He could play all three outfield positions. You got Fried. That was finalized today. He'll be wearing number 54. You traded Cortez for a closer. You got Williams. So, I mean, I do like what the Yankees, have done, and they're far from done. And there's still a lot of players, on the market. Which
and the thing is, in the American League, I think you get a better shot at making a World Series because you still got to go through the Dodgers if you're in the National League. So that's one thing about, and Ohtani's going to pitch next year, so that's a tough team to.
Right now, I'll echo this. Right, I heard this statement earlier today. Right, I believe it was Evan Roberts. Maybe it wasn't today. It wasn't today. Yesterday, the Yankees. And this is after losing Juan Soto, are the best team in the American League. They're the team to beat in the American League.
Yeah.
Not a bad plan B. You got to give them cash.
Not at all. Not at all. And they have a lot of more money to spend. So maybe Hal Steinbrenner, we'll see. We'll see, but
well, if they would have locked up Soto, excuse me, Cortez would have stayed. They wouldn't have got Fried, and I'd probably be the closer next year. So, I mean, that's, that's where we're at with that. But,
And just talk about your Knicks. I guess the third place in the division, looking up ahead, Boston and Cleveland. What's your prediction with the Knicks? You watching the games? I know.
I'm starting to get, I'm a seasonal guy. So as the NFL season, listen, the Giants NFL season was over weeks ago, but around this time of year is when I start getting, hot and heavy, if you will, into the NBA.
Likewise.
It's the Boston. The Eastern Conference is still Boston's. I love the Cat trade. I love the Cat. I expect them to. I expect them to be active in the. As I mean, I know we're far away, but February, the trade deadline. I like this Knicks team with the Cat. I like the Knicks team last year. I love Tom Thibodeau. And again, now you talk about, right, we referenced the Giants, right? And let's get a little throwback here. The Knicks were very, very bad a long time. You get the right coach, Thibodeau, instills, you get the right culture, and you bring in the right players. And
then you get players that want to come here. So
that's the thing. Right now, nobody's saying, "Oh, you know what? I want to go to the Giants next year."
Yeah.
But then the Nets, the Nets. Listen, I'm happy where the Knicks are right now. I mean, they hit a little snag these last few days, if you will. But when it comes to the Nets, listen, I know they had to move Schroeder. Moving him alone is going to sacrifice even more wins. But that's a full rebuild. It is what it is.
Well, I mean, if you look at Cleveland, like they had Jared Allen and LeVert that were on the Nets, and then they had Atkins, who was their coach, who was the Cleveland coach. So I mean, that was
Kenny Atkinson Fun story about him. I actually met him once. Very nice guy. He was the Knicks shooting coach when Mike D'Antoni was the head coach of the Knicks. And now you have to say, you look at the Nets, they got rid of Kenny Atkinson because Kevin Durant did not want Kenny Atkinson to coach that team. Yeah. And I am thrilled. Kenny Atkinson, a Long Island guy. I am thrilled. I am thrilled for Kenny Atkinson.
Yeah, he was a good coach, like you said. Just didn't the superstar
timing there with those? That was just a bad.
Yeah, and the Nets were playing. I like that Nets team though, when Allen and LeVert and and then it just like when they made that trade, they never.
Karis LeVert, I always liked him.
Yeah,
Allen too.
But I think we'll wrap this episode up. We got one more for the year, and on 30. Devils are in first place. We haven't touched the hockey yet, so just gotta. And if the playoffs ended today, the blue shirts wouldn't make the playoffs, so they got problems.
Well, we'll give you. That'll be the goal in 2025. We'll give you time to talk about your Devils. But the one thing I do want to mention, I want to give a shout out, and I unfortunately could not make that episode. Is Jimmy interviewed Joe Klecko?
Yes,
and I actually watched the 30 for 30. Very entertaining, but it showed you the Long Island effect that the Jets had on Long Island playing in Shea Stadium. And I thought it was one of the better ones I've seen in a long time. I mean, you see Gastineau, some things will never change. Marty Lyons. I mean, Marty Lyons was always going to be Marty Lyons. He's direct. He's honest. He calls it as he sees it.
Yeah, he was a color commentator for the Jets for a long time. So
the soldier the soldier of peace there, Abdul Salam. He just passed away. They actually did a very nice thing. Method Man from Wu-Tang Clan was the MC. Or the narrator.
I thought he was from SINY. I didn't realize he was from Hempstead. Method Man.
Yes.
Yeah.
He plays that well though. That's a whole nother story. That's another episode. We'll get Wu-Tang Clan on.
Yeah. We'll get Wu-Tang.
But I thought it was good. I thought Klecko was good. Listen, those guys were throwbacks. They played hurt. They played hard. They played for each other, and I mean, they were an absolute force, and it was nice. They did a little tribute, to Abdul Salam. He, like I said, he recently passed away. The soldier of peace there. And Gastineau was, you forget because of all the sideshow that he had, Bridget Nielsen, the whole thing, the steroids, he thought he was the
sack dance,
the whole thing. But let me tell you, the few years he was unblockable.
Well, yeah,
he was unblockable.
And he was the face of the NFL, and that Jets team was that was a fun team to watch. That was a fun team to watch. So. And they made it, but you forget about things like they talked about the Miami game where Shula left the tarp off the field. Now that wouldn't happen. But I mean, the AJ Dewey game that was a big game, and they end up Dolphins made it to the Super Bowl. They end up losing to Frisco, but who knows? Who knows?
Yep.
But I mean,
I think too the only thing I wanted to add, and you bring up a great point, that whole idea of why he didn't tarp the field, and they really didn't mention this in the documentary. Freeman McNeil that year was tearing up the NFL.
Well,
the Jeff Hunt game was tearing up the NFL, and that's the reason why. And when somebody was quoted from the Dolphin organization that was still around, I forgot who it was. They were blaming the city of Miami because at the time that was I believe.
The Orange Bowl was
the city of Miami owned the Orange Bowl, but that's like you said, that would never happen today. It was really rough conditions, and you would have had Jets should have been in the Super Bowl.
Do you think Gastineau deserves to be in Canton? You think he's that good?
I just don't think he has the longevity.
Yeah, and what do you think about him calling out Brett Favre with that sack?
I mean, coming from a Giant fan, everybody knows right? It was nonsense. It was. We talked about this the last episode. I remember that like it was yesterday. There was a timeout. Favre and Strahan, they met right by the ball at the line of scrimmage. Whatever it was, this is my thing with the Gastineau thing. Like, why now? Like, he didn't say anything to him for
He was
years.
there. He was in the
He
stadium.
was there, right? He was there. He came on the field to embrace Strahan. You know, I think, to be honest with you, Favre has done so many bad things. And if it was anybody else but Gastineau, I think a lot more people would have jumped on it. And that's the shame of it. I don't think you can, you know, you're not going to bash the guy. What are you going to do? You know, you hurt me. I mean, Favre wasn't doing it. I'm not, you know, he had no axe to grind with Mark Gastineau. He threw Strahan a bone, bottom line.
Yeah.
You know,
and
ultimately, too, right? Watt broke the record. So,
yeah. So, all records are made to be broken.
Yeah.
So, all right, Jerry. Well, I think we're up against it, but listen, thanks for changing the time, making it a little bit later. That's our first evening episode, so I appreciate that.
Another half hour would have been in my pajamas, Jimmy. You know?
Yeah, exactly. So I would see see your bedroom instead of your basement, but this is episode number 29. I'd like to thank Dave Sturcio for being patient with me, especially with this episode. You know, to change things around. We have another episode this week, and then we're going to close the year out. We're going to have another giant on. So kind of caught lightning in a bottle with this 100th anniversary of Giants. So he's not, you know, he was a name everybody's going to recognize. We're fortunate to have him. So that's going to be tomorrow. But this is going to be episode number 29. Catch us on social media. Catch us on Chop Sports Media. Like us, share us on YouTube. We're on Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram. I keep on trying to put these shorts out to promote the show. And also we're on Patreon if you like what you see. And also I have to apologize to my friend Jimmy McCumber because I brought up a bad loss in the Old Bridge Middlesex County championship, which I heard was he liked that he got mentioned, but then I stuck the knife.
He did contact you?
Yeah, it was a messenger. It was a messenger. So he's like, yeah, he was all happy he got mentioned, and then I mentioned the bad game, so I had to apologize to Jimmy McCumber. So good luck on the Old Bridge basketball team this year. Hopefully they make amends, but who knows? Who knows? But
anyway. High school hoops started yesterday. So
yeah. So they're having retiring Nas Reed's number on January 15th at Roseville Catholic. So $15.
I'm sure you'll be there.
I'm thinking about it. It's a Thursday night, so I'm thinking about it. So the school needs help too. So I'm sure he's looking to help the school out. But this is episode number 29 out. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Jerry, and we'll see you very soon.
See you soon, everyone.
And then contact us if you have any questions or concerns.